Hi, and welcome back to this reflection. So, today I'm going to speak about aliens and extraterrestrials, and this is something that I've wanted to speak on for a little while actually. There were a few announcements that happened a few months ago, and I felt like I really wanted to speak on it because, obviously, as some of us know, this was part of one of the agendas that we heard about that was going to be revealed, and I'm sure many other people know about Project Bluebeam as well, if you haven't already looked that one up. But ultimately, it's something to be cautious of, and I just want to share my perspective because this isn't something that's new to me at all in any way. And for many people, it will be something, it might be really game changing and shattering experience to acknowledge and to accept that, it's true. There are these other beings that exist. And it's not just us here. And obviously, so many people already have kind of come to that conclusion, even though we were, well, I guess you can say lied to. And we were told that, it's not real. But there's been disclosures over time. Like, I remember back in the day when they announced that Area 51, and for such a long time, it was denied. And then one point, the officials came through and they said, "Oh, by the way, yes, this is what we've been doing." There's been so many disclosures over time as well by whistleblowers and of the like and all sorts of stuff, right? But my perspective isn't really coming from that direction because that's just one. And to be honest, I feel like that's actually quite a small perspective. And there is actually thousands and thousands of people who, and I think it is in the thousands, are connecting with beings from other planetary systems that aren't on Earth. And that's a whole other story. And so, I just wanted to say that a lot of people who have been following my journey anyway for a while now know that I've been on this awakening for the past, it's almost coming into 10 years now. And, I've been diving deep into these other aspects of life that isn't just here in the physical, and I've been doing this for this amount of time. It's been a long research, So this is where I'm coming from, and I'm not saying that I know everything. Obviously, it doesn't really work like that. Nobody here knows everything, but I'm just sharing from my perspective, which some people aren't going to be aware of, and it's going to be unfamiliar to them. And then obviously there's going to be loads of other people who have been on a similar path and similar realizations and acceptance of what's happening. So really, that's all that I can say is that, it's not necessarily this case of like, oh yeah, but what's right and what's wrong. It's also just being able to listen, just being able to hear. If you've heard one thing on the mainstream media and what I've realized about this corpse that they found in Mexico that looks like E.T., which was released very recently, so many people that I know don't believe it, i.e. they are not falling for it, and they see through it and they just think that it's completely rubbish. And it's official, and again, it's another official announcement that's taken place. And for me, I think that's amazing. I think it's so good that I mean, obviously we don't know. It's not like, obviously we don't know. So it's not like, oh, by the way, yeah, it's a hoax, or it's false, and they're trying to portray it as this real thing. But if it is completely dud, which so many people are thinking that it is, then that's great, because now we can see like what's really happening and why are they coming forward and all of a sudden now telling us this thing, like trying to announce and make this announcement that, oh, by the way, the aliens have always existed, they've always been here, like just to let you know. And I also just want to say that the other important thing to know is that, right, yes, aliens do exist. They definitely do exist. And I know this from my own research and experience that have been going through for a long time now. But not just that, for me, this is they exist, but not in the way that we have been told, not in the way that we have been taught, and also not in the way that they're now making these announcements and portraying it out to be. So let's rewind. If we go back to our definition of alien, ultimately it's just something that isn't a human being, it's another species. It doesn't necessarily need to be like human related, right? In the same Homo sapien kind of line at all, but at the same time it's not necessarily an animal, it's like a kind of conscious species, right? So but it's different, it's external, it's outside, it's not the same as what we would define as who we are. And it's quite elusive really, because like what does that even mean? Because you know what I mean, like, well, yeah, of course there's like more, there's life, there's other life that exists, right? And a lot of the time, and yeah, there's been disclosures over time, you know, so many whistleblowers that have been speaking out, and you know, that whole Area 51 thing that I was, you know, now that then they announced that it's actually real. So there's been so much, and these things are just things that you have to take on someone's word, like either you believe them or you don't, right? And that's it, unless you're actually doing your own research, which, you know what, guys, I'm just gonna say the internet is vast and very knowledgeable. And it's not just the internet, obviously, because every single information that we intake, we have to discern for ourselves and decide whether or not we believe it to be true, right? So basically that's the situation. And what to say about it? Well, yeah, so I think that a lot of the time people have said that they've seen spaceships, they've seen UFOs, which they're calling something else, UAPs or something now. But they've seen all these different objects and they've seen beings, and that's one aspect of it, is just what I want to share. So just retrack a bit. So even though the announcements are coming out now, it's not, and they also look like they're false or they're not necessarily real or they haven't been proven yet, there's just like little trinkets at the moment, doesn't mean that aliens are not real, basically. Actually, yes, we know that they are real, is the understanding of so many of us, but at the same time, not in the way that you're saying, and not in the way that you are now portraying it out to be, finding these artifacts and all these different things, and all of a sudden, okay, no, that doesn't make sense. So I just wanted to make that clear, because I think some people might see these things and just say, oh, well, it just says that it's a UFO, so it doesn't mean anything. Like, UFO is just a UFO, doesn't necessarily mean anything to do with ETs or aliens. Yeah, fair enough, but at the same time, just because these announcements are like simple at the moment and haven't gone into the breadth yet, it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen, and also that they're not actually real, right? But ultimately, if you're following what's happening in the external narrative, all you're going to know is what they are feeding you, and that's how it goes for everything. All you are going to know is what they tell you. Oh, we found this new being in Mexico. Well, great, but actually, like I said, there are so many people that are already communicating with beings from other planet, other species, already now, in this year, in this timeline. It's already happening, you know? So I wanted to just take it back to this book that I found the other day, which is called Easy Journey to Other Planets. And I found it at a Hare Krishna kind of place. And obviously I'm not here about spouting about religion. That's not really the vibe. But at the same time, I know we can get a lot from religion, and we can just learn from it, you know. So this book is really, really interesting, actually. And you know what? He basically talks a lot about the Bhagavad Gita. And at the beginning of my awakening, I went into that. I read that most of that book, and I learned about the Vedas, and I learned all this stuff, and it's something that's been calling me strongly, and I was really, really interested in, and I did a lot of reading around that, basically, and it resonated with me a lot. And this is just like a reminder, taking me back into that kind of space. But basically the concept of here is that, and you know, this is why the information of UFOs and aliens is so profound because it just completely shifts what we know. And ultimately, just let it come in and shift your reality and shift your perspective to expand you beyond your limited perception. Because ultimately, all of us have been given this limited perception. Some of us have been seeking and diving deeper, 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 finding out more than what they tell us. And that's literally the way it is. If you want to be one of those people, there's nothing stopping you. You can now. You can just do it, you know what I mean? But yeah. So what I find really interesting is that basically this book, they kind of he talks about how we are caught in the cycle of life and death. And this is just and he talks about science and how actually this knowledge is a lot more advanced than our current science. So I'm just going to read a little bit here. Life is definitely not generated simply by a material reaction like a chemical combination, as many foolish men claim. Material interaction is set in motion by a superior being who creates a favorable circumstance to accommodate the spiritual living force. The superior energy handles matter in an appropriate way, as determined by the free will of the spiritual being. For example, building materials do not automatically react and suddenly assume the shape of a residential house. The living spiritual being handles matter appropriately by his free will and thus constructs his house. By the way, spiritual being is how they're defining us, human beings. It's important to take note of that, because what they have done here is told us that we are not spiritual human beings. This isn't something that we are told. So, only a man with a poor fund of knowledge avoids this conclusion. The creator may remain unseen in the background, but that does not mean that there is no creator. One should not be illusioned simply by the gigantic form of the material universe. Rather, one should learn to discern the existence of supreme intelligence behind all these material manifestations. The supreme being, who is the supreme intelligence, is the ultimate creator, the all-attractive personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Although one may not be aware of this, there is definite information of the creator given in Vedic literatures such as Bhagavad Gita and especially Srimad Bhagavatam. So, just want to make it clear, when it comes to religion, I think a lot of people can be really turned off by these words like Krishna, Hare Krishna, God. So, if you can, just denounce any perception that you have of that, any connotations with what those words mean for you, and instead of reading it in that religious context, just read it as, whatever resonates for you, the creator, God, one, the unknown, the mystery. Because ultimately I think this is really important, and a lot of people stop and they halt right there because they can't look past these words, when actually if you go through the words, and because a lot of people get stuck on these words, and then they start saying God and they start talking about Krishna as this being that we have to bow down to. And again, that's not the point. That's just not the point. And for me, it's a bit of both. It's like, just because people are bowing down and putting it on a pedestal and saying that this person is punishing us and this God is here to, all this stuff that don't make sense and that don't resonate with us, it doesn't mean that God doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist in the way that we have been taught. And that is it. So we can come to our own definition of understanding of God, and that is from a spiritual perspective, and it's really spiritual science. And this is what is so amazing about the Veda, because it's spiritual science. Again, these two words don't normally go together, but they are so connected. And the more you figure out and the more you dive deeper, the more you will start to really, really see that actually it is a science. Yeah, and now there was something else. Okay, so man's desire to be deathless is realized only in the spiritual world. As stated at the beginning of this essay, a desire for eternal life is a sign of dormant spiritual life. The aim of human civilization should be targeted to that end. It is possible for every human being to transfer himself to that spiritual realm by the process of bhakti yoga, as described herein. It's a great science, just what I was saying. And in India has produced many scientific literatures by which perfection of life may be realized. Now, again, bhakti yoga is one route. This book is describing one route. And obviously there are so many more routes. It's not just one. And so this stuff is ancient, but ultimately it's not ancient. Like, this knowledge and this intelligence is actually where we come from. So this isn't disconnected to the humans that exist now and who we are now. And ultimately, I feel like there's so much truth that comes through these Indian texts, right? And I think for a very long time, it was in a way that was, it's kind of said, you have to do these practices. You have to practice yoga, there's Kriya yoga, the Bhakti yoga, all these different things. And if you don't do that, then you aren't going to be able to, enlightenment is the word they use, attain enlightenment and all this kind of stuff. And then that goes into Buddhism and everything. But things have shifted now and things have changed. And I can tell you that just from my own experience, because I've been going through so many shifts that people have already said to me, people, Indian heritage, have said, how did that happen? It's not like I was practicing yoga, so now what's happening is the awakenings are happening spontaneously, and what I can say about that is that it's just because of the time period that we're in. This is a natural evolution of the earth and of the planet, and that's why it's happening, and that is why everything is happening in the world the way it is and why it looks like such a mess. But so yeah, just want to emphasize that it's actually just it's important to be able to be non-attached to what is being shared, because you don't need to practice bhakti yoga. Like, ultimately, you're going to find your own ways. Your own ways will be taken to whatever is guiding you, your own higher self, as well as other beings that might be guiding you as well. And yeah, I'm going to talk about that just now. But there was another part that... Yeah, this is great. Look. Okay, and this again, I can just say is very close related to Colontic science, which I went into as well, which has really shifted my reality and helped me to ground in what's really taking place on the planet. And so Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita also informs us that this material world is full of miseries in the shape of birth, old age, disease, and death. Even in the topmost planet of the material universe, these miseries are present. Only in his own abode is there a total absence of misery. In that abode there is no need of light from sun, moon, or fire. The planets are self-luminous. Life there is perpetual and full of knowledge and bliss. That is what is known as Sanatana Dharma. It is therefore natural to conclude that the living entities must return home, back to Godhead, to enjoy life in the Sanatana Dharma with the Sanatana Purusa or the Purushottama, Lord Sri Krishna. They must not remain to rot in this miserable land of material existence. There is no happiness in the material sphere. Even in Brahmaloka, so plans and activities for elevation to higher planets within the material universe are carried out by those who are less intelligent. Less intelligent men also take shelter of demigods and only derive benefits which endure for a limited period, and thus they are temporary. The intelligent men, however, abandon all engagements of religion in the name of religion and take shelter of the Supreme Personality. So just there, basically, there's a big emphasis on the material realm, the material existence. There's a huge emphasis on the difference, and when you put it through words, it's hard to explain. But ultimately, most of the stuff is an experience. So unless you have the experience of it, it's very difficult to understand, So ultimately, this is saying, that actually this reality in this world was full of disease and suffering and life and death. is not the real reality. Now, when we come to the term apocalypse, this is what this is talking about. And in Indian scripture, they call it the Maya. It's called the illusion, and that's because that's what it is. What we're living in here, this way of actually idolizing materialism and greed and power and money, this is an illusion. It's false. This is not life. This is not real. And the reality is our spiritual being, and also it's this world that exists outside of all of that. And like it said here, it's self-sustaining. What's the word? Self-luminous. Now we're talking about light and energy. It's perpetual and it's full of knowledge and bliss, right? So when you take it to that, then what you can see is that it's a completely different existence. So we are here suffering, life and death, and we're so used to it, right? And also what we can call is the cycle of reincarnation as well. We just keep coming and we keep back. But obviously, then there's a loss of memory and we don't remember it. And energy is taken from something else to make it something else. So then, and some people call this base 10 mathematics. And then when we go here to the base 12 mathematics and the perpetual life and bliss and knowledge, what it is self-sustaining. You don't need to take energy from something else to get energy. It's already there. It's luminous. It is light, So these two places are completely different, and they're both real. It's not fantasy. And these ancient texts are talking about it, and they're talking about it in this way, right? Okay, and now I just wanted to share this. Maybe this will be the last one. So in these days when men are trying to go to the moon, people should not think that Krishna consciousness is concerned with something old-fashioned. When the world is progressing to reach the moon, we are chanting Hare Krishna. But people should not misunderstand and assume that we are lagging behind modern scientific advancement. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that man's attempt to reach higher planets is not new. Newspaper headlines read, "Man's first steps on the moon." But the reporters do not know that millions and millions of men went there and came back. This is not the first time. This is an ancient practice. Yeah. In the Bhagavad Gita, it's clearly stated, "My dear Arjuna, even if you go to the highest planetary system, which is called Brahmaloka, you will have to come back. Therefore, interplanetary travel is not new. It is known to the Krishna conscious devotees." Yeah. And yeah, okay. There we have it. Right? This isn't... I mean, look at that amazing drawing. This isn't just, I feel like some people think, people are just making up. These are ancient texts. They date back over 2,000 years, This is old, and what happened 2,000 years ago? None of us were around to even know, to recollect what was happening then. Okay, I'll just turn the lights on. So, yeah, ultimately, basically, so what we can see is that it's something that has been discussed in circles of information. It's kind of hidden for spiritual seekers and people who are devoted to religious paths, specifically in India, because obviously it's not necessarily, it's not the Christian path as we know it, but most probably was the original path when it comes down to the scenes and everything. But as we can see, it's something that's been spoken about already, okay? So this isn't new. This is not new. And then I just wanted to come to the definition of alien, because what I have learned over these past few years, I feel like so much has come up for me personally over these past few years in 2020, realizing what's going on, and I've just been diving into it. Because you're not going to find this information on the news. It's not how it works. And if you think about it, like if there's this great mystery of life and not many people know, it's unknown. If you think about God, you really think God is going to make an announcement on the news? Or, that doesn't make sense. And even the whole alien thing, if there is an announcement on the news about UFOs, then you've got to question it. Literally, you've got to question it. Anything in the mainstream narrative has to be questioned. As we've seen, so much of what they've been spouting is just pure, straight out propaganda. So basically, yeah. So the alien definition, because now this is where it gets a bit more complicated. And I'm just figuring out how I'm going to explain this. But okay, so what I will say is, yeah. So I feel like in ancient Vedic scripture, there was like a path that you would walk, and that's how basically you would be able to make this easy journey to other planets, right? But what I think is happening now is that it's not happening by a specific path, and it's just unfolding naturally, and some people are just getting there, just through meditation. Obviously, meditation is so powerful. And also just the natural unraveling of their soul path. And so what I will say to you now is that I have been seeing a lot of people communicating with beings from other planet, and it's actually huge. If you don't know, and if you didn't know this, it is massive. So, and it's not hidden. All of this stuff and this information is right here, and it's right in front of our eyes. And it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean they're extra special kind of people. It doesn't mean they think they know everything. It doesn't mean that. Actually, most of the time it means the opposite. It means that they have surrendered and let go of their ego in order to allow that consciousness to come through and speak through. And I mean, listen, not always, but like a lot of the time you have to kind of like let go of your previous concept of reality and humble yourself. Basically, you have to humble yourself so that you can connect. And I think that's actually one of the prerequisites to even connecting with your own higher self. Like, it doesn't work. It doesn't happen through the ego. So there's been loads of people who, and now this is actually a really big topic in spiritual communities that has been spoken about quite a lot over the past few years, because there's this thing called channeling, and if you don't know what it is, there are actually a few different definitions of it, and it can be quite confusing. But channeling is basically when you connect with a being from another planetary system, dimension, star system, outside of Earth. And like one definition of it is that they speak through you. And from what I've heard about this is that it's quite dangerous. You have to be very careful because your line is open to infiltration. All sorts of different things can happen. And also, why are you connecting with these other beings? Is there really any need? All you really need to do is connect with your own higher self, because your own higher self exists in another dimension and in another planetary system somewhere else. And what's happening is we're actually just living here without that direct connection and memory of. And there's so much to this. It's like huge. So I probably will have to do more than one video. But basically that's one. Another understanding is just like you connect. Some people like channeling can just be channeling source, divine consciousness, right? It's coming outside of me, and done. Some people use it in that way quite loosely, and then another one is like just speaking to other beings and then interpreting it yourself, and then making that information come forwards and speaking it into reality. So there are like a few different definitions. I know so many people who are just went on down the path of it's wrong, it's not cool, you shouldn't do it because you just don't know what's going to happen. It's difficult, it's dangerous. Like your field, everything can be hijacked in a way where you like your soul can actually literally be hijacked and someone else can come into your body. There's just so many levels to it, basically. So there's that, right? And obviously, to people who've been on the spiritual path and journey for a while, this is not new information at all in any way. But to some people, it's going to be, what? So you can look it up on YouTube, and I'm telling you, it's huge. The videos have thousands of views. I don't know if they're in the millions, maybe some of them are, but it's crazy. Some of them I definitely stay away from because I'm just thinking, like, who is this being? And basically, most of the beings come from higher dimensions, but the higher dimensions doesn't mean that they're good. Like, oh, they're here for our best interests, and what happens is, and this is why it's such a debated topic, is because beings will give 80% truth and 20% lies, and they will speak through someone and they're saying, you know, all of this, and they're speaking from this way that feels like they care, but then actually they're actually also sending in some little bits of information that isn't real, or that is like twisting people's decision-making process and choices. So, and then in that way sending them down a whole different path. So it's actually really vast and very complicated, and this is why discernment is so important. And I speak about this on my online course, and the online course is literally just that, how to activate yourself so that you can become aware and know what to do, know how to handle yourself, know how to stay grounded within this spiritual warfare that's taking place. So there's so many people that are already speaking to these beings, is what I'm saying. So this is what I back to the beginning of the video, this concept that we have of this alien, these UFOs that appear out of the sky, is just like one small fraction of the truth. And yes, sometimes they will appear like that, but from what I have seen, most of the time it happens via direct connection, and it's like almost like you've got a connection that goes straight to source. And then in these different ways, there's like beings here, and at any point in the elevator you can stop and talk to other beings, right? And as I was saying in the description, some people want to go straight up there. They don't want to deal with all those voices and noise, because who knows where they're trying to take us. But then other people will stop, and they, you know, and ultimately this is also the concept of spiritual guides. Again, these are the extraterrestrial beings. This is them. You know, people talk about the spiritual guides. They're not, it's not just fluff, it's not just words and make them, people are saying, it's legit. People have spiritual guides that they can communicate with. Some people not even just communicate, some people just feel their presence, and they're all from different planets and star systems. Okay, so now it's going to get a bit more complicated. So these different planets and star systems, we see them, right? We can see them, but again, they don't. This book is describing, this is the material realm. So all we can do is go out there. And what he says in this book as well is like, you can only go to the moon so many times, and then you have to come back. But there's no point keep going and keep traveling to these different planets when at the end of the day, we're still stuck here with this life, suffering, death reality, where everything is like these two different paradigms that I was describing. The point is to get to this one. And now, again, this is to be careful, because the point isn't to hate the experience here and want to escape. That's like, for me, that's complete bypassing, and that's not the point. We are where we are because we are supposed to be here. If you're here, it's because you are here. There's nothing else that you're supposed to experience other than this now, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't change it and shift and then move. And like, some people, I think this is like such a utopia, and yeah, maybe in some senses it isn't. It's this dream world and dream existence. But at the same time, everyone in their own time is what's happening. It's not a race. It's not I am better than you, and you are worse than me, and you are lower than me, or like you're stupid. It's none of those things. Like, consciousness and evolution operates on a completely different realm. It doesn't work like that. That's all egotistical chat as well. How it works is it's about the journey of your soul. So we are here. Our journey, our soul has gone through these journeys. Might have had many different lives. Most human beings on this planet have had many different lives. And through each life, we can learn our lessons, crop, add, progress, move forwards. And that's how it works. And you cannot avoid the steps or anything. And eventually it will get to the point where you can, you've learned so much to a space where you have a lot of love, and you can start to dive deeper into, the real truth of the planet and existence and what's happening here, right? Because there's one level where you're stuck in the drama, and that's all you can see, and you can only heal so much as your physical body, and it's only when you can break out of that and the survival mode where you can actually open yourself up to these new questions and to this divine connection. And this thing about God and this thing about source, I just want to say is that religion has been completely hijacked, and so many people know this. We all know this. Deep down, we all know this. And I just really want to share that source and God, use your own definition. We are here to rewrite what it really means, to what it really feels and experience and it feels like. And God is an experience. It's not a being. It's not a person in the sky. It's not a man. It's not a woman. It's all of the above. It's everything, to be honest, So we are rewriting the definition and reclaiming what God means, yeah? Just because when I speak about God, I'm not talking about it in the religious context, and we don't need to talk about it like that anymore. So much of that is completely highly manipulated. So again, what I'd like to share is that you and your connection to God is so important right now, and you can find that connection without the religion. It's been so enmeshed that we think that they come together, but they're actually two different things. A lot of people that have found their way into religion, they don't actually know what God is as an experience, because all they've got is the text and the writing, which is all up in the mind and the mental. But drop it deeper, lower, into actually the embodiment of God. It's a whole different thing, So it's so mad how this alien thing has just opened the door to these whole discoveries and disillusionment. And this is the time of disillusionment, because you think that we were just living here alone? Hell no! So yeah, basically a lot of people have already been speaking to these ETs. Now, the definition of alien and extraterrestrial, why do we think that it's something that's outside of us, and that they're like, and all I can say about this, it comes back to the most basic principle, which is basically what a lot of Buddhists and the ancient Indian texts believe, what I believe, what I feel like is a universal truth that, if you don't believe it, I don't know, something must be a little bit distorted. But everything is one. We are one. Everything is interconnected. God is everywhere. It's everything. Obviously, the religions say that sometimes, but they can't practice what they preach, and they're blurting out this is better than yours, and this hierarchy, and it doesn't work like that. But when you really come back down to it, everything is one, right? So when you think that, at one specific level, when you can view everything as one, then you can see that these aliens are not aliens, really. They're not extraterrestrials. They are part of us just as much as we are a part of them, really. So, and then that's when I'm going to open the door to our heritage as intergalactic beings of light and sound, because ultimately that is what we are. And when you're working with frequency, now you can see how it doesn't work when we're going to have to go and travel out there to go to another planet and dimension. No, it works through frequency. So how? Now we have to think differently. How do we travel there without traveling there? This guy in this book is telling us that they've been doing this for years and years and years. I read that book, Autobiography of a Yogi, incredible book, and his teacher, and that's it. And you know what they did? And how they traveled? They teleported. Now, this is something that's been written in science fiction books and movies, and it's actually real. This is actually the truth. The door of these ETs and aliens and UFOs is opening up our inheritance and as intergalactic beings. Now what's happening is that we are going to be able to reconnect with the wider family of beings that exist in our planet, in our galaxy, in our solar system, and in others too. And it's infinite. Reality is infinite. This is the whole point. It's infinite, it is eternal. And now to get into the understanding of like why we are here in this suffering paradigm, and then, ultimately God, source, is just experiencing everything at the same time. There is no time, right? God, source, is just experiencing anything and everything you can imagine. Why would it not want to? Because it is creation. It wants to experience it all. And how can it experience it all? It has to experience it all by the divine dichotomy, which is you cannot know what you are unless you know what you are not. But actually, I'll do it that way. You cannot know what you are in this eternal, self-perpetuating, luminous state unless you know you're not in this disease and death. And, that's it. And so, ultimately, it's so beautiful and fascinating because we are evolving, but eventually we evolve, and then we end up here, and then we volunteer to come back to forget, so that we can keep playing out this cosmic play, and it just never ends. It's basically how it is. We fall from our divine birthright from source. We fall into the material world. So the way that it works is that, let's just think of it as a sphere. On the outside is the material world, as they describe it, the illusion, the Maya. And then as you move into a different dimension, it goes here like this, right? And from here, source is right in the middle, the central, the sun, the light, it's all here. So now we go down here, right? We have volunteered to be here and to have this experience right now of going through the apocalypse of... It's crazy when you think about it. You really just look at the world that it is today and you think, who designed this and why? Because there is so much suffering, and can you believe the amount of people that can't eat? Like, why? It literally doesn't make sense. And again, that's the volunteer. We came here to have this experience so that we can then move into the different, so that we can then, and this is creation. This is life. This, and of course it's infinite and eternal. Like, we have been told it's not, but as we are seeing now, it's going to unravel. And as we do the inner work and as we take our journeys more seriously, we are starting to unravel this all within ourselves. The record, the Akashic record, the hall of records exists within us. So this is why I always talk about our human body potential, magic, divinity. It's so important. This body holds history. It holds everything, not just within your own lineage, but the history of the earth. Like, these are our bodies and they are so intelligent. This is it, And obviously, so there's like the physical matter, and then we've also got our energy bodies, and they are constantly interacting with each other. There's so much information that I'm sharing in this video. I feel like it's quite a lot. But let's just go back to the alien part of things. And yeah, so I heard about this before, that there's going to be announcements. And the announcement is really just so that the officials can, like many other things, it's just so that they can control the narrative. And like I said, there's no need to follow just because they're saying and just because they're announcing it. Go and discover for yourself. Like, even what I'm telling you here, there's no point just saying, oh, I don't believe it. Why don't you just go and discover for yourself? Why don't you sit in meditation? And not just for one day or 1 week. Sit in it for years. Why don't you try 3 years? and then see what starts happening to your body, because I've been through the shift and I've done this. Then you will begin to realize the true nature of reality. There's no point in me just telling you this thing and then you just thinking, okay, yeah, even just taking along and just agreeing with it. The point is you have to experience it for yourself. That's it. You have to go out there and be on the ground, and that is it. It's not just about understanding things on mind. There's so much more to that, because we're not just our minds, So the narrative that is to come out, like, okay, now it's been very small announcements, but over the past 6 months there's been a lot about UFOs. There's been a lot. And now this Mexico thing with this being is also very random. But ultimately there's going to be more. There's going to be more that is revealed and more that is announced. And until they announce something, oh, by the way, we're going to be, in a way, I guess it will be in a way where they do somehow. And I don't know if people are even going to believe it, because the way they've been doing it is just so dodge. But basically, eventually, to say that, we are going to be working with these alien beings and they're going to help us. Okay, watch this space, is what I can say. Now, obviously, red flag alert. As I was describing earlier, just because it's an alien, it doesn't mean it's here to help us, okay? Ultimately, the aliens, they can't do much as well. There's nothing to be afraid of. They can only do what we allow them to do. Everything is reliant upon our consent. And that's when you realize how powerful you are. So unless you agree to it, otherwise, you just know, I do not consent. It's just not going to happen, like so many of us have done these past few years. So, and some people have consented, don't realize what they're consenting to. When you agree to things on this material realm, you are agreeing to things in other realms that you exist that you don't even know it's happening. Yeah, so basically, the thing is to be aware of what we are being fed and what we are being told. Because as I have showed here already, it's not new, this whole concept of extraterrestrials and other beings. It's not new at all. And so now all of a sudden they want to announce it. Okay, for so many of us, we know that it's not new, so it's dodge. Do you know what I mean? But because it was kept as a secret for a long time, firstly, and people who were connecting, people just brand them as crazy, and won't even go into that, but people are having experiences with other beings and they're also thinking that they're crazy when actually they're probably just speaking and communicating to the spirits that are here. And then also just quickly with the beings, ultimately it's who we are as well. Like, so if you think about aliens being aliens, right, they can connect with us. Well, actually, we can also connect with them, as I've said, so many people are already doing. So that means that we are the aliens. Do you get it? Do you see? We are the aliens. Like, we think that we're humans here. Like, to them, we will be the aliens, but we're not the aliens, because they are connecting and communicating with each other while we've just been separated. And the separation is because of this frequency fence that has been on our planet for such a long time. And that goes into a whole different thing, which is a long story. So I think I'll save that one for another time. But ultimately, we are the aliens. And as we open ourselves up to this communication and also this teleportation, like this ancient practice, and being able to move around and go to these places. Can you imagine that? So as we start to do this now, we're moving beyond our preconceived idea of what it means to be a human being, all right? So now we are the aliens. And then to take that a step further as well is that many people who are in the spiritual community who have guides and they have these beings that they feel are guiding them throughout their life. Basically, they are their family, their soul family, the star family. And it's actually a lot of the time where they come from, outside of being born on the planet in this material plane. And to understand that, again, everything exists all now. We are seeded from different places. You know, basically this one goes into so much deeper than planet Earth and just being born. Because when you're born here, you come from somewhere else. Have you ever thought about where you come from before you are born, right? Some people still have memories of where they came from, you know? Some people still remember that. But as we have decided to come here, we have agreed that the memory will be lost. But now, during this cycle and this period of time, the memory is coming back, because it's coming back through the earth as well as our bodies. And so, so we come from these other places, and the other places aren't Earth, you know. All these star systems that we see in the sky, the Pleiades, you know, Lyra, Sirius, all of these places are where beings come from. But now, again, it's confusing because, like I said, it's not like, oh, those beings just come in a spaceship here. Well, that's not really how it works. You can travel, and then there's the thing called astral traveling. It's so deep. And you can travel, basically, while your body is still here, and you can go to these other places, and you can view, you know, there's a term for it. What's it called now? Remote viewing. Yeah. And you can, which means you can actually go there with your soul and see things. So there's that. Okay, but then there's so much to it. And obviously it's not just that, there's also what's happening now is that basically, and what he's talked about in this book, is basically the teleportation. So being able to take your physical body now and then appear on another planet somewhere else. And again, it doesn't work the way that we understand it. It's like we're not getting in a spaceship and going there. You know, in order to be able to dissolve your matter and move it through the portals and the stargates to enter into these other dimensions and to go through that, it's like it's the spiritual science. There's a whole different concept of what we understand science to be. You know what I mean? Yeah. So anyway, this is my chat about aliens. And a lot of what I've learnt about them and us, because ultimately that is I think calling aliens it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, and actually it makes things more complicated. This is but at the same time, I will share something, because somebody said that they like to call the beings that are light and feel amazing. They call the star family, but the beings that are heavy and dark and manipulative and controlling this reality, they call aliens. And I think that happens a lot, to be honest with you. So this is the thing to be cautious of. There are so many beings, and like everything in the world, and the reason why is this divine dichotomy. We have to experience what we are not to know what we are. And this is such a profound statement. And it's just the way that it is. There's no reason other than it is just how it is. And basically there are bad ETs and there are good ones. Some of them are here for us, to help us in this planetary shift and the spiritual remembrance, and others are here to directly siphon, hijack, manipulate, and to prevent this shift that's taking place. This is a spiritual warfare. So it's great the alien topic has come up, so that we can talk about it now and we can be open about it and we can actually learn and decipher what's going on. But at the same time, it's important to know that there is bad and there is good. And it doesn't mean that there is right and wrong. It just means that it depends on where your path is taking you, what you choose, what you learn now in order to navigate where you want to go, you know? So when you know that is how it is, then you can always choose the higher path. But when you don't know, then you might fall for the traps, and you might fall into these beings who are trying to prevent this remembrance of who we are. And specifically with the announcements that, like I said, are going to keep coming. Where are they trying to take us with this? What are they trying to say? What, you know? And especially if they're trying to merge with the AI. AI is not a bad thing, but again, there's good and there's bad. So which path are you following? Are you aware that there's these dichotomies, and are you aware that you have to choose, that it's your choice, that it's up to you, you know? And trying to take us into that, when the natural evolution that's taking place now is an ascension and expansion, and these other beings are trying to take us into this descension and degenerate kind of phase, be aware that this is what's happening, so that at the end of the day you can choose. And most people who are choosing the descension is because they don't know, they are oblivious, they are unaware. And that's just the way it is. It's not good or bad, and you know, it might seem sad at this level, but at a high level it's just source experiencing itself. That's just what it is. But we can equip ourselves, and when you can see more, then you can make the informed decisions. So yeah, aliens are not new. This is a practice and communication that a lot of people have had for a very long time. People have already been communicating with other beings for a long time, just not in the way that we have been told, not in a way where you have to get in a spaceship and go, although that is how it happens sometimes, but most of the time it happens internally. It's through the body. Your body is the Stargate, you know? So just through closing your eyes and being able to travel and being able to communicate, and also just to be able to receive this communication that is coming, opening this chakra. And yeah, so many people have already been doing that, like so many people. So it's just to be cautious and aware when it's announced in a big way in the media that what they are trying to do and what their agenda is. And welcome to this interplanetary, multidimensional, intergalactic show. This is it. This is it. We are here. Everything that you thought wasn't real is real. Everything that we've seen in Star Trek and Star Wars and all of these sci-fi TV series and films is real. It's all real. Welcome. If you want to get involved, you know, the only way to get involved is through yourself. It's you. It's not, you know, and again, that's like such a way of disempowering us. You know, he literally says millions of people have traveled there. But now if you tell everyone that the only way to go is through Elon Musk's SpaceX, do you see the hijack? That's the hijack. The only way to go to Mars or the moon is through Elon Musk's SpaceX, right? So now what? You need lots of money to get there. This is complete distortion of the truth. It's not how it is. Like, you know, but obviously it takes a lot of dedication to be able to actually expand these places, and because we're here and it's so dense, there's a lot of healing that has to take place first, and that's in the phase that we're in now. It's just healing. But that's the disempowerment, because now you're waiting to get onto the spaceship or to not, because you're not even going to make it. You can't even afford it, right? And actually, in the real matter of the fact is that you can, and if you're really, really dedicated, then you will, basically. You will be able to travel intergalactically, interdimensionally, And so many of us will soon. We will. Because a lot of us have been already come from these other planets in the first place. But anyway, that's another topic, and let me just finish the video here, because this is quite a long one. But yeah, thank you for listening, and I hope that you can take this information in openly, listening with more than just your ears and more than just your mind, and opening your heart so that you can actually let it land and take time, a moment to really integrate what has been said and what has been shared here, because I know deep down for me that all of what I've shared is real and it's true. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to be the same for you, and even if it isn't, it's okay, because I also know that some people are not here to awaken and they are not here to expand. So some people might just be in complete denial of what I'm sharing. And also, at the end of the day, it's all right. It's all right, you're the whole point is for you to come up with your own conclusion and to find your own truth within it all. But yeah, thank you for listening. And just, I did create an online course, and ultimately that's just about how to become stable throughout this time, because this is a spiritual warfare and there is more to come, and it's just a constant cycle of disillusionment and fear mongering as well. So when we can just go and stand in our power and find that, this is really what it's all about. And it's just me sharing what I've learned over my journey to support other people on the same path. So do check that out if you are interested, and check out the New Monks podcast as well, because I speak to so many people who, I speak to so many people who also have been on this path and on this journey, and also know about ETs and aliens in a similar vein to how I know about them as well. So yeah, thank you so much.